Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us. Wonderful to have you. I'm Dr. Margo Jacquot, your mental health business mentor. And today's guest, I say frequently that I love my guests. This is someone with whom for whom I have such appreciation, affection, um, gratitude. I'm
So
so
nice.
delighted to have Karyn Taeyaerts here today. I just said, Karyn, I've known you for years. How do I pronounce your last name?
It's
Because
not
I only
easy.
call you, it's not, and I only call, so we have Jacquot and Taeyaerts here today. That's great. Good luck, audience.
Mhm.
Figure that out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so Karyn is a professional development coach here in the Chicagoland area. And I have worked with Karyn over the years. I haven't seen you for a little while, but I'm part of an organization called the Women's Presidents Organization. And these are all women who are business owners, have really high powered jobs, many of them. And you have been sort of the coach to our WPO group. People speak so highly of you. I can't say enough about Karyn's level of skill and compassion. uh, you As we were even hopping on today, we did a little grounding exercise because I had sort of a spinny morning, and just immediately you just have some superpower, some coaching superpower that folks, if you can connect with Karyn, I think is well worth it. So Karyn, thank you.
What an introduction.
I'm part of your fan club. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
I'm, delighted to be here. Anytime that I can spend time with you, Margot, is always fun, and if I have a grounding superpower, or I don't know exactly what it is, the superpower, you have an activate superpower, so here I am on a podcast when I barely even listen to podcasts, so only
That's
you
right.
could get me on here. Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm very
Uh-huh.
appreciative, right? Exactly, exactly. Podcast, modcast, right? So, folks, when Karen and I were talking about, I knew I wanted to have Karen on as a guest because she's been so helpful to so many people that I know, and myself included, me included. Um, and one of the things that Karen does is you are an expert in facilitating the DISC assessment tool. And I have used you for my team to be able to do the disc, to interpret the disc. It's been incredibly helpful with my leadership team figuring out what's my style, what are other people's styles, where do they meet, where do they diverge, and how do we all work together? And how do we flex so that we can communicate better? That has been incredible for our team. So I thought, what a great opportunity to talk about something that you have great facility with. So, would you tell us just a bit, tell the folks who are out there, a little bit about the disc profile and how you got into using it, and how would one in general use it?
So I've used the profile for probably more than 15 years at this point. I've had my own coaching practice for 10 years, but prior to that, you asked how did I come to use it? Um, I was working as sort of the yin to the yang of a business owner in a startup environment, and we cared about the company in the same way. We cared about the people and what mattered most in the same way. And when it came to how we approached our work and our communication with one another, we were opposites. And so we couldn't ever figure out how we could be so very aligned and so very frustrating to
Exactly.
one
That's
another.
what happens. Yeah,
And
that's what happens. Right.
yeah, so that's really the impetus. So someone suggested, "Have you ever looked at this profile and gotten to know what light it can shed on your own approach to your communication and your work?" And neither of us had, and we did it, and we immediately were able to see how opposite we were in our approaches, and from that place we could stop being frustrated with one another and start to just raise our own awareness and our awareness of the other person so that we could adjust ourselves to one another and raise our effectiveness with one another and lower our annoyance with one another, which
Yep.
was a major benefit. And from there, we started using it with the whole company. And when I started my own coaching practice, I knew that I wanted to become a disc partner. That's how they, market their products in the world. and use it with my clients,
Mm.
and I use it with
Yeah,
all my
it's an
clients.
incredible tool, folks. If you haven't taken the disc, haven't taken it recently, and haven't taken it with your current team, highly, highly recommend. So tell us a bit about the disc. And we had spoken before about you're very welcome to use mine. I mean, I remember where mine was. I am such a D. I am such a D all day long. That we can talk a little bit about what that means. And other people on my team were an S and a C. So these two other folks. So
Yes. Okay. So some very different approaches. So what Margot is referring to is when you take a disc profile report, you receive back information, sort of plotting you on a circle with 4 quadrants. You may have seen other things with colors and different words. DISC uses 4 quadrants, one for each dominant style. And what it's really helping you see are your natural preferences and tendencies for communication and how you approach work, really. Um, I really always like to qualify that it is just the tip of the iceberg of understanding another human being. We are all way more nuanced than a report can ever, capture. And it should be really be used in the way that you and your team would use it as a door opener to conversation. Memorizing each other's styles, we're just simply not that. That's too much of a shortcut. It's not helpful. And in the work that you all do, it's way too reductive, really, of humanity. Um, so it's a beginning of a conversation, and it helps you understand your kind of go-to moves, and it helps you understand the go-to moves of others. So, for example, D's are very pulled towards action and results. And we see in you and us being on the line today with this podcast that you've been doing for a long time. They have sort of an orientation towards um, challenge, seeing the holes in things. And as you highlighted an example, the opposite style to a D, the S, is actually my style. And the dominant characteristics there would be support and stability and collaboration. I'm speaking slower because this style moves a little at that a slower pace. Cautionary little note, like right in there when I say this style behaves this way, or people with this style are this. That's not right either, right? So it's a generality. But the S style and the D style can have some natural tension. We move through the world at a different pace. We're motivated by different things. Primary motivation for a Dr. Margot would be to get things done, have the boxes checked at the end of the day, boom, off we go. Primary motivation for someone of my style would be, did we hear from everyone? I sensed that something might have been off over here. Did we attend to that? We might need to revisit it tomorrow and make sure that we closed everything and that we understood the context of what we were trying to accomplish here. Neither is better. They're highly complementary
yeah.
when
And
leveraged well.
there are plenty of times, Karen, where I feel like the style you're describing, the S, would apply to me, but it wouldn't be my dominant style. It's something that I can
Yes,
get to, but it's not my
totally.
first instinct. Do you mind just describing really
Yes.
quickly what does D stand for, I stand for, S stand for, C stand for?
D is dominance, I is influence, S is steadiness, and C is conscientiousness.
So in your work with folks, right? So and why don't we just I think as therapists we like stories, we like case examples. When you did this with our team, we did not have anybody who fell into the I. We did have one person, I was the D. Boom. We had one C and one S. And so how do you remember? I mean, it's been a few years. You really did help us see the benefits of each of those styles. And there are benefits of those styles, right? Because we can have judgments about, well, you're all about just getting things done, or you're all about the touchy-feely stuff. But in a team, isn't it beneficial to have people with some of each? Like you want,
100%.
right? If we're all D's, good luck. There's too many cooks in the kitchen, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Um, a good way to think about this is maybe just take a simple example. Like your team is trying to implement a new process. That probably happens all the time in
All
everyone's
the time.
practice.
Yep.
Okay, so the D says we need to have this working more efficiently. So let's get it done. And I'd like to see it done by the end of the week. And the I says, great, let's get everybody together. We're going to gather everybody's ideas. At the end, we'll have a celebration. These are, again, gross generalizations of how the process is going to move forward, but I'm bringing a lot of energy and enthusiasm to this process renovation. I might go talk to a lot of people in the community. I'm going to reach outward, and I'm just going to gather and gather and gather good juice. The S is going to say, did we check in with all of the departments before we roll anything out? Can you give me the context of how come we need to change this? Is our current process broken? Did we do it wrong? So there's some reassurance there that needs to be said, like, it's not wrong. We're just excited about doing something new and different. And the C says, I've run through the process. There's some holes in it, and we're going to need to fine tune that and create something of a much higher quality. So I just went all the way around the circle, and you can probably hear that each of those voices is essential in this rolling out successfully, having buy in from the rest of the team, being comprehensive, being well thought out, getting done. So, a team that you don't have to have every style on a team. You have to recognize when you might need to fill in for a style that's absent to do something you described earlier, which is sort of stretch yourself to a place that's not your natural home base. That's a wonderful leadership skill to develop over time is your ability to stretch and come back to recharge, to understand what's yours to do and the easiest things for you and where you can go meet other people and how they best work.
I love that. That's great. Right. So we don't have to have every single style on a leadership team. It can be beneficial, but how and when do we stretch? So knowing those styles, knowing what does a D do, what does an I bring, what does an S bring? Because that's really kind of how I think about it too, Karen, is what are we all bringing? And I'll tell you, the folks who used to just that I struggled with, because I am fairly fast moving. I make decisions fairly quickly. They're, I hope, done thoughtfully, but quickly. I have some trust in myself to do that and experience. I've been doing this a long time. So the people who would slow me down and say, "Well, wait a minute, but you're going too fast and you haven't thought about these 500 other boxes that need to be checked. And can we go through them one by one a week?" I mean, I'm being ridiculous, but that's kind of how it felt like, really? And it's
How
going
it
to be,
feels.
that's
Yeah.
how it feels. It's going to be 500 weeks, 10 years before we
Yes.
get through it, right before we get this thing implemented.
10-year plan.
The 10-year
Mhm.
plan, right? When I wanted this by the end of the month. So, right. So that can be one way of thinking about it. But I also need to be open to hearing that person's perspective. Do they have something to offer me? Do they have is there something I have missed or that I haven't really thought about and that I need to take my time? As a team goes, I'm serving the team and probably the whole process and my practice well by listening to what that person says and having the conversation, to your point. No, we can't take 10 years. We can take a month. We can take 2 months. How can we do this in that amount of time? Because I want to get the box checked. I want to get it done. You want to make sure it's done the right way, thoroughly. I do too. Let's work together.
Yes. When there's a foundation of trust and respect on a team, you can almost, if you imagine it like a baton, hand that back and forth, or even literally a hand being extended. So you might be able to say to that person, I know you wish we could spend 10 years on this doing the one a week method. And I need to ask you to trust me to go faster this time. And I got it. Like I sort of hold the responsibility for my speed so that you can release this concern of yours. So it's sort of an acknowledge and validate and help somebody move to the other spot. Conversely, they need to trust that when they kind of pull the emergency cord and say, it's too fast, Margot, we need to check 20 of these before we can go. We don't need to do 500, but I called the top 20. They need to trust that you'll say, "Okay, that makes sense," without an eye
Mhm.
roll or an audible humph or anything, it really needs to be like, "I
Right.
hear your concern," and because you choose when you use that lever, I trust you. All of this is easier when there is trust and respect underneath. You can goof up, you can misstep, you can um, kind of let your own preferences and tendencies dominate and not be very accommodating of others' styles. And people are more, give more grace. But when there's not, this is a great way to begin to cultivate that kind of trust so that you can sort of dance more nimbly with one another in the future.
Exactly. It is the nimble dance. I think any business owner, any practice owner, any business owner, we have to be nimble. I love that, the nimble dance. So, for example, Karen, in terms of that creating trust, one member of our leadership team at that point in time, I was assuming that if people have an opinion, they're going to tell me what it is, which I mean, I knew these people. I thought, "You're gonna tell me if there's a and I told you, I said, "If you have an issue, tell me. I wanna hear about it." And since I said it to you, of course, you're gonna do it. And what we found out was that there was a person on the team because of their on the leadership team, because of their own history and their personality type and their profile here, that wasn't speaking up. And evidently, that had been happening for a couple of years where things were occurring and they were afraid to tell me. And it wasn't about me, it wasn't because I had been mean, rotten, or nasty, it's just who they were. And so that was a great conversation for us to have. I was so stunned. I don't know if you remember that, it's been a while, but I was so stunned when she said, when it became apparent, I think you called it out and you said, "Well, you're probably not speaking your truth a lot of the time." And she nodded her head, and I what? How can that be? Why? I'm a nice person. Why wouldn't you tell me what you think and need and feel? And but it was because of it wasn't about me, right? It was because of her particular style. But had we not done the disc, I wouldn't have known that. And so as a team, we decided that that was one of the things we needed to commit to is that we were going to go back and check in with this particular person and see what she needed to have the space to say what was true for her or not. She could elect not to, but we wouldn't have gotten to that otherwise.
An invitation. It's really like acknowledging we all approach how we share information differently. We approach how we begin a project differently. We approach whether our emphasis at the start of something is about people's competency or maybe getting to know them really deeply. Our entry point to work together is different,
Mhm.
and we can all adapt it and flex with it,
We can.
so
We can.
yeah.
So if
Mhm.
someone wanted to implement a DISC process for themselves so that they can understand, their who they are, because it might influence how they are out in the world connecting with other
Yeah.
people with referral
I
sources.
get asked that all the time. Is
Yeah,
this applicable to the rest of my life?
right.
Yes.
So how would somebody start that process?
Yeah. So access you can Google all sorts of different disc products. Personally, I think the Everything disc products by Wiley are the kind of the gold standard. Um, and so you can reach out to their website and get assigned to an authorized partner who can help administer the tool for you. I myself am one of those. You can reach out to me. It's pretty straightforward. It's a simple buy. They're around $90 currently, and they take about 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes to complete. You get a full report. And if you do something inside your organization, they now have really amazing portals where everybody can make their results available online to one another. And so folks inside of an organization can be, starting on a new project team and throw everybody into one map and see where they all fall and be able to look on a continuum of where they might be, what they're going to be able to leverage, what they might want to look out for as they're starting to work together. It's really dynamic, useful tool. It's called
Hmm.
Catalyst.
Oh, interesting. Well, we might have to go back and do an
Yeah.
updated
Yeah.
version with you, Karen,
Something that you
because
haven't done.
it's something we haven't
Yes.
done. And I think that being able to see where do we all
Hmm.
land and see that visually, I think that could be
Yeah.
really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and inside of that are built in a lot of suggestions of strategies. In the report that you receive are suggestions of strategies to begin to kind of play with your own response. You have to find your own voice and way through this stuff like any professional development.
Yeah. Can you give
So
an example of that? So it might give a suggestion like what?
might give a suggestion like, well, I'll say for my style with yours. It might give a suggestion to be more direct and to lead with the headline. That's something that maybe wouldn't be in the report, but I think is a really important suggestion when working with a D. Is
Don't
to like
bury the
tell you where
lead.
we're going, and I could tell you that I attached all the other documents you might want to read, and I can probably know that you're not going to read them, and I can release taking that personally.
Exactly, that's right. Spot on. That's right. Thank you for all the
You-
documents. Maybe somebody else can look at those. I don't know, but yeah,
yes,
right. Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
hmm
Right.
So the strategy would be for me to take a different approach in presenting information to you. And a suggestion might be for me to ask myself if, what I'm getting back from you is actually a personal critique or not at all. And a strategy might be for me to explain my own preferences and tendencies out of the gate, not in a moment when we're trying to do a project together, not in a moment where we might be experiencing some conflict or dissonance, but ahead of time for us to almost have like a user guide conversation.
Oh, I
Hey,
love
Margo,
that.
we're just getting started working together. Here's a few things to know about me.
Mm,
Dot, dot, dot.
that's
How about you? Dot, dot,
wonderful.
dot. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so, since we're talking about that's how you would try to approach me, how should I, as a D, try to approach you?
What a wonderfully reflective question on behalf of your D style. That's great.
I do my best.
That's a wonderful, wonderful question.
I'm
And
teachable.
very great. Right. Offer me some time and space to think about something. So let's say you have a new idea, which you do often, and you ping it over to me and help me discern when it's something you actually want to activate and when is it just a new idea. Sort of be explicit about what's happening inside Margot. That's a good suggestion. And and if you would like to know right now what needs to happen with that, you might offer to me, now's a time when I need an immediate response. Or you might say, hey, Karen, I know that you'd probably like some thought, some space to think about that and get back to me with a more reflected answer. I would be forever grateful.
And in the end, if I do that, our working relationship, the product that we can put out together is going to be significantly different. So it doesn't require me necessarily to completely undo who I am, but right, because that's not going to happen. But it offers me the opportunity to be, to your point, reflective and say, okay, so I'm speaking with Karen today. I need to make sure that I can give you some time, give you some space, give you what you need so that you can have your reflective time. My brother Mark, who was a guest recently, who's our COO, we are both as D as the day is long. And so he and I having a meeting is like ping, 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 ping. It's a very different kind of process. Neither of us wants to get stuck in the weeds, like enough of that. So, right now, many of our listeners, Karen, are practice owners and therapists. What we're describing can sound very different, right? As a D can sound very different than how I would be in the therapy chair. This isn't about that. And a lot of I'll tell you, I do a fair amount of business consulting with practice owners. The style they bring sometimes is very therapist-y. And I would encourage them to really take this questionnaire to see where they fall. And by therapist-y, I mean they're very interested in what everybody's feeling. They're very
Of
interested in,
course.
right,
Great listeners.
great
Mhm.
listeners, and then they're curious as to why things don't move in their organization. And sometimes that can be why. And they're a little curious because I'm a therapist and I offered this nice space for the person. And why are things not going well? So, are there suggestions also of how to maybe adjust your own style a bit to be more effective? And more effective might be you need to add in a little bit of each of these.
Yeah, that's right. So I get asked a lot if certain roles all fall in certain quadrants, like are all people in charge Ds? And it's simply not true. So there are as many ways of being an effective leader as there are, spots on this circle where a dot can fall. And the idea is for you to mm, leverage your natural abilities, the things that feel like breathing air to you, raise your awareness about the holes you have, and then find a way to fill the hole. So, if you are a practice owner who is an amazing therapist and quite naturally uses those same skills as a leader, so your style is sort of similar to your therapy practice, surround yourself with people of a different style and develop and maintain a trusting relationship where you can leverage the things that are very natural to them without feeling threatened by that or confused by that or annoyed by that. It's more like rounding each other out. And continue to develop yourself to ask your when do I need to put my foot on the gas more? And how can I create accountability systems for myself to do that when it's not my go to move? I can give an example personally of that. I run my own business, and if left to my own style devices, I would be always sort of, I might not launch new programs or products regularly, or certainly with not as boldly. I can be bold, but I move deliberately. And I know that about myself. So I set up accountability partners for myself. I put stakes in the ground. I set a lot of goals and I ask others' help in helping me stay accountable to what I want to move on and how. Knowing your own holes and then plugging them is really what is it's all about.
Is what it's all about. Exactly. I love that suggestion too, Karen, of making sure we surround ourselves, if needed, with people who do have that different style. It's not required, but I do know there are plenty of practices where everybody is very much as an S, very much an S. And so, how do we move the needle forward? So, right. So, and again, nothing wrong with that, but I love the idea of having a rounded out team. I think it's a great way to go.
And using disc to hire is a no-no, right? So as a filter, so I will say that. However, if you recognize on your own team that there's maybe a spot that isn't a seat that's not filled, challenge each other to develop in that way for somebody to put on that hat and actually stretch and develop with an intentional role play of that perspective or collaborate with others outside of your immediate spot. If you're a two-person group, you probably belong to an association or you have other colleagues who have practices and round yourself out that way. There's a million ways to round yourself out. You don't have to have a big enough team or hire for people who are different than you. Not at all.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up, Karen, because sometimes it's an individual practice owner and they just have their own practice, or they might have a couple of people on the leadership team, and sometimes they might have more. So, right. So, using people outside of your organization who are also trusted, who seem to have that, and you can be an advisory board for each other. I love that idea. So, Karen, if somebody wanted to connect with you, we'll make sure in the show notes we have your website information, your email, so that people can connect with
Thanks.
you. You're still doing professional development coaching. Folks, I cannot speak enough as someone who has utilized Karen's services. She is exceptionally skilled. And I've worked with some other coaches who I thought were good. Karen is the one.
What a wonderful I endorsement. You spoke with such enthusiasm about me. It was a great example of how an I style might wrap up a podcast.
That's great. That's great. See, I even in all my D-ness, I have some I
You
as
did.
well. So that's
You
great.
did.
Thank you,
You did.
Karen.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
Karen, thank you so, so much for joining us today.
Really my pleasure.
Always wonderful to speak with you. I'm going to call you and set up a time to connect because I think I can
Awesome.
always use your wisdom. So, folks, please do the same wherever you are across the country. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll look forward to having you with us next time. Be well.